It has undoubtedly been a wild journey in the world of luxury sports watches, and more so in recent years. From the advent of the luxury sports watch in the 1970s to the birth of the smartwatch in the new millennium, several elements have influenced the trajectory of sports watches. Original luxury sports watches, the evolution of the market, and why these timepieces have become an obsession for many watch enthusiasts. Sports watches are beasts. They may be worn in any rough and tumble setting, from Wimbledon center court to the scary twists of the Circuit de Monaco. They have the ability to execute remarkable mechanical feats. But how did these mechanical wonders get so popular? At Baselworld, when Audemars Piguet released what was dubbed the first luxury sports watch, it served as a spine-tingling shock to the watch world, sending ripples across the watch market as it was seen to be an unheard-of concept. However, the first luxury smartwatch can be dated even further than that. Jaeger-LeCoultre created the Reverso in the 1930s to serve polo players who needed something tough enough to survive a polo match, something that was not feasible at the time due to wristwatches having glass crystal cases. Truth be told, it had a rather charming appearance, but it reportedly had one flaw. It was quite heavy and bulky on the wrist when worn. Quite intentionally, Jaeger-LeCoultre made it robust with a patented rotating case, but it was only a matter of time before the style benders converted its purpose for stylish reasons, transforming a supposed sports watch into a fashion statement. In the 1950s and 1960s, there was an explosion of new products which served new and exciting uses. For example, long-distance flights. Steel was the only affordable material robust enough to use for these activities. This period left us with the two main watch types we see in the market today: chronographs and dive watches. Chronographs, stopwatches, have been around for a very long time. Their association with motorsports in the 1950s and 1960s saw them rise considerably in popularity. Pilots also found chronographs very useful. A notable jump in time takes us to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. Upon its release in the 1972 Swiss Watch Show, the Piguet wasn't an immediate hit. Far from it. It was unusual looking, with exposed screws in unexpected places, an octagonal bezel, and an integrated bracelet, and it costs a great deal more than a modern Rolex Submariner. However, slowly but surely, the concept became largely embraced, especially with the help of good marketing. Patek Philippe's Nautilus was created shortly after with inspiration from ship portholes, while the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak got its idea from vintage diving helmets. Both were developed by Gerald Genta, the most influential watch designer of the 20th century, which might explain why they both have integrated bracelets rather than the typical lug and spring bar system used to connect most watch straps. This style of bracelet provided a seamless connection between the case and its bracelet. These two notable watches quickly made their way into a market segment dominated by high-end, exquisitely crafted steel timepieces. TAG Heuer also had an interesting dive into the sports market. First off, Heuer's background was mainly in automotive. The company created a dashboard chronograph in 1911, and in 1933 came the Octavia, a modern chronograph used in both planes and cars. In the 1950s and 60s, Heuer became increasingly involved in auto racing, developing a heavy-duty reputation as a timekeeper and an instrument maker of superb quality and skill. Jack Heuer, the great-grandson of Heuer's founder Edward Heuer, delivered some watches as prompts to a Hollywood prop master, Donald Nunley. Steve McQueen, a racing legend, then wore a Monaco on his wrist and the Heuer emblem on his racing overalls, propelling the Heuer Monaco on a big stage. Chronographs may have been around since the late 1800s, but Omega introduced this line in 1957. The manual winding Speedmaster Professional, or Moonwatch, was worn during the first American spacewalk as part of NASA's Gemini 4 mission. The Apollo 11 mission, viewed by over 600 million people on Earth, was also the first watch an astronaut wore while walking on the moon. As time progressed, more brands threw their hats into the luxury sports watch ring, creating interesting pieces, some of which were more surprising than others, like the A. Lange & Söhne Odysseus. The Odysseus was featured with a new L155.1 Datamatic automatic movement with a unique dual-window day and date display, first revealed in stainless steel with a blue dial, curved from Patek Philippe Nautilus. It's slender, just as expected, with the steel case at 40.5mm and 11.1mm thick. In comparison, it's a tad slimmer than a Rolex Submariner, but just slightly more than a Nautilus, which is not necessarily bad as it offers a chance to add elements like the crown guards. The movement is an automatic caliber with a central rotor whose power reserve of 50 hours may not be so impressive, but it's compensated by an excellent winding efficiency. Additionally, it came with a frequency of 4 Hz and water resistance of up to 120 meters. Gruppo Force Balenci Sport Limited Edition has won numerous laurels for its complicated movement and fantastic design and finish. Despite the fact that they mainly utilize classic finishes, their pieces continually seem unique, radiating a sensation that some other manufacturers cannot match. The limited sport edition GF09X features a 45mm titanium case surrounding a blue dial over a white strap made of rubber with a titanium buckle. The movement is quite simple but robust. It featured a time-only display and an inclined balance wheel meant to fit the curvature of the wearer's wrist. This Greubel Forsey watch also measures 16mm in thickness and 44.8mm from lug to lug. However, this watch was limited to only 18 pieces globally. Built primarily for diving, this piece screams class but is complex. First off, this watch is not small. Far from it. It's 50mm wide, which may sound outrageous, but that's not the only surprise RM032 offers. At 18mm deeply submerged in water, it's as thick as a house brick and twice as solid. The porthole located at the back of the piece reveals the caliber RMA C2. It also contains a curved piece of sapphire that bends with the case. Interestingly, the lightness of the titanium coupled with the wide rubber strap makes it a surprisingly comfortable watch to wear. This rose gold behemoth is 50mm across, including a flyback chronograph complication paired with a power reserve indication and an annual calendar. However, the initial price of $150,000 may have deterred many potential buyers. Luxury sport watches like the Reverso and Royal Oak would always have a place in the hearts of collectors. However, when put into perspective, they cannot compete with smartwatches in terms of innovations and technology. As a result, a couple of traditional mechanical watchmakers have started to dive into the world of smartwatches to make, let's say, a hybrid. We are now in a new era for nearly half a century since the debut of the dubbed first official luxury sports watch, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. An evolution is here to stay, propelled by newer and better technology, as well as growing competitiveness among professional sportsmen. But what is the new direction? Well, there are basically three distinctive directions for modern sports watches. They are the sporty style, the general sports style, and the professional or specific sports style. First, the sporty style. These styles of watches are made by fashion brands or even top brands for entry-level users. They give an appropriate look and feel of a sports watch without high-end specifications. This way, the consumer can get the desired look without having to burn a hole in their pockets financially. Then we have the general sports. The modern sports watch category is robust enough and contains some sports features: chronographs, water resistance, visibility, luminosity. They are designed for various activities without anything specific in mind, like running, lifting, and swimming, but they can't be used in place of a dive watch or for piloting. Those are for specific purposes. This brings us to the sport-specific/professional watches. A number of companies like Breitling, Panerai, Bremont, Seiko, Bell & Ross, and others that made their names in sport-specific or professional arenas moved as close to the mainstream as they could. This category of watches serves more purpose to the user than the general sports watches in their various niches, like diving and aviation, because they contain the specific features required for such purposes. These three very diverse groups truly demonstrate how popular sports watches are. You've probably been wondering why smartwatches and other wearable watches can't eradicate people's obsession with sports watches. Having a watch was a big deal last century, but watches now have way more uses than simply telling the time. Smartphone manufacturers such as Apple and Samsung may have gone back to the drawing board with their smartwatch series, but the fact that sports watches are still firmly in the game justifies the fact that they're timeless. Pun intended. Why though? One fundamental reason: watches evolved not for fashion purposes, but to win wars. In World War I, aviation was the next military innovation, and watches were the foundation of modern warfare. Even to this day, the military still uses watches for training, given that sport has many similarities with war in regards to effective teamwork. Another reason is that sports watches are the best example of practicality. Whether simple or complex activities, they get the job done. They are rigid, robust, and can get relatively easy to use, unlike some smartwatches with too many buttons. Entry-level sports watches are likely water-resistant and have accessible interfaces, comprising a few buttons to do most of what athletes need during the day. Another reason why people seem so obsessed with them is that they are suitable for every function. Both diver and pilot watches have models that suit the modern lifestyle of users. They can also be worn on any occasion, be it an outing or work, and can be adored in any outfit, even the classic aviator timepieces. The option to switch from a steel bracelet to a leather strap creates even more versatility and endless style options. Pilot's watches are offered as three-hand watches with chronograph functions, and regardless of what purpose you use them for, it's still nice to know that you could still use them for their original purpose flawlessly.